Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. I interview incredible people who've dedicated their lives to helping those who've been impacted by trauma. A big thank you to our sponsors and our guests who are supporting this show. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Emily, where are you from originally and where are you currently?
So I am from, I was born in Canada, and I am living in Calgary, Alberta. Um, how much do you want to know? Like, do you want
Just
to know
that.
my history?
Just that's it. Just that's it.
Okay.
All right. Michael, how about you?
So I have grown up here in Central Illinois. I did a little stint in Ohio in my early 20s and then came back to Central Illinois to start the practice.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. So, Michael, why are we here today?
Yeah, so I wanted to share some exciting things. It's been a while since we've been able to connect, and a lot has happened. But the biggest thing is um, the if you remember in 2018 there was the symposium in Canada with Dr. Perry that was life changing for me personally and professionally. And the that
And just to interrupt you, we're talking about Dr. Bruce Perry.
Dr. Bruce Perry,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
And so that symposium launched a lot of things for me. At that point, our clinical practice was there were just two of us. I knew about trauma. I knew how trauma impacted the brain, but I didn't know a whole lot about what it looked like in clinical practice. And that symposium connected with me with people from around the world. And it stirred a fire in me that I wanted to come back, and that's where the Rising Tide conference came from, because that was just so incredible for me. I wanted to give that gift to other people. And over the years, we've been able to stay in touch and build some of the closest friendships that I have with the Neurosequential Network and the people there. And now, finally, after 8 years, the symposium is back. And I wanted to make sure that people know about this symposium and to know, I think in the trauma discussion, there is a lot of stuff that's out there about how trauma impacts the brain and kind of what we see with behavior. But if I'm going to be honest, I think there's this struggle between that content and what does it look like in practice. And so this symposium brings all those things together and brings some incredibly brilliant minds together. And so that's why Dr. Wang is on here as well as the symposium chair, that we just wanted to make sure professionals know about this. And it's located in Banff, Canada. I mean, I can't get any better than that.
So, Emily, how did you meet Michael? How did you come on board here?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we met at one of the symposiums, and I have to say, when we think about the neurosequential model and Dr. Perry's work, it really is something that has shifted the lens of everything that we do. So, I would say in my earlier years as a psychologist, there was clear expectations and directives of you know, looking at psychology from the lens of behaviors. And when we started to work with Dr. Perry, what we started to understand was what was behind those behaviors. And I would say that in the whole field, it became a bit of a paradigm shift. It became really not just understanding, cognitively how do we shift behaviors, but really being able to understand the physiology of what was happening inside the bodies that created some of these maladaptive behaviors for kids and families that we were working with. So that shift really created a new way of us being able to look at how kids were behaving and what we needed to do to support them. So instead of supporting how their behaviors were going to change, we were supporting more how are we going to develop their brain in a way that is so much more effective. And as Michael was saying, our whole idea around this is understanding the lens of the neurosequential model, but being able to really think about what that looks like in practice. So when we bring together people from the for this symposium, they're really coming together to say, this is what I've done with what I've understood about the lens, and this is what I've done. And it's amazing how creative people can be in coming up with ways of understanding what brain development means, understanding what this means in practice, understanding how I want these children and families that I'm working with to better understand, well, to be better able to capture the the best part of their development and the best part of their brain, right?
Michael, for our listeners, and as we kind of get into this conversation here, how would you define the neurosequential model?
So the neurosequential model is taking a look at how the brain naturally develops and how the brain develops in sequential order, and that in order to that sequential order gets impacted by trauma, and that it develops from the bottom up and develops all these systems that are at work. And when trauma comes into play, that trauma impacts those systems, and the neurosequential model looks at how do we help those systems heal by engaging them in the way that we're naturally created, the way that our brain naturally develops. And so the neurosequential model is looking at those pieces and the power of understanding how those systems work and how do we properly engage them, and the healing power of relationships and connection. And it's bringing all of those pieces and parts together in a way that I think one of the beautiful parts is understanding the brain is so complex, and Dr. Perry's work has made it understandable and digestible, and gives us practical strategies of how do we engage that brain and help the healing process. No matter if you're working with little kids or if you're working with adults, he breaks it down and makes it make sense for all of us.
Mm-hmm. So, Emily, kind of expanding on that, if I'm hearing this correctly, if we've got a young kid, 6, 7, 8, they experience a trauma at a certain point. When that trauma is happening at a certain developmental stage, right? So the work, if I'm hearing correctly, is that, and understanding when that happens is very important, because that may or may not have impacted their developmental stage. Talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we know that the brain develops much more quickly in the earlier years. So between 0 to 3, 0 to 5 years of age, the brain is developing very quickly. And as a result of that, the impact of what is happening in those early years is a lot greater than what happens in the later years. But as soon as I say that, we have to also be aware that the brain is always the brain has a level of neuroplasticity. So we're always going to be changing. We're always going to be growing. It's just the impact of what happens in those earlier years is so much greater as a result of how quickly the brain is developing at that stage.
And if we're looking through the lens of the neurosequential model, again, it's understanding specifically when that trauma happened.
Yes.
And to what degree it impacted the kid's developmental stage.
Yeah, and so what people talk about often is that developmental trauma. So there are many different aspects of trauma. You can talk about trauma from the perspective of having a specific experience that results in post-traumatic stress disorder. You can talk about a single incident trauma. You can talk about intergenerational trauma. When we're talking about those early years of development, we are talking about developmental trauma. What has happened in those early relational interactions, what has happened during the intrauterine period, if there was a lot of chaos, if there was poverty, if there was substance abuse, domestic violence during those periods of time, and the attachment period is impacted, then there's more likely to be what we call developmental trauma, which then changes the trajectory of how the brain develops.
Okay. So, Michael, stepping back a little bit, what is your goal, more specifically, with the symposium?
Yeah. So I think that this is such an incredible gift. Getting connected to Dr. Wang and Dr. Perry in the neurosequential community has been such an incredible gift that it's like a gift that I can't help but share, because there are a lot of us in the mental health field that battle burnout, and the community and the support that comes from the neurosequential network and the community of people there has helped me through some of the hardest days in my career. Not just like managing things from cases and being able to say, hey, I'm stuck, can you help me here, as well as just being a source of encouragement and support. That's the hope, is that people would come to this and not just learn content related stuff. I think that's really important, but the connection in the community, I can't say enough about it, because it's what's helped me, and I know that it can help so many other people. And so I wanted to make sure that we were on here so that we could share this with other people. I kind of joke, you get continuing education, and it's like a vacation being in Banff. I think it's you can't get any better than that. And then also, as a part of the symposium, there's the pre-conference with Dr. Perry, and taking a look at the natural healing rhythms of the world, and being able to take a look at what are we doing for our bodies, and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves as professionals as well, I think is really important, in making sure that we're letting people know this isn't just about content, it's about connection. It's about experiencing, like, I think the way that even the schedule is put together is helping us with Dr. Perry's concept, the regulate, relate, reason. So you're not only going to learn about this at the symposium, you're going to experience it. And I think that that's just incredible. But you've got a pre-conference and the symposium. You've got an incredible venue and incredible connection with people that will last long after the symposium. And so that's my goal. That's my hope, is that more people hear about this.
So what is the date of the symposium, number one? And mentioned it's in Banff. Is there going to be an online virtual component as well?
So it is October 26th through the 29th. The pre-conference being October 26th, and the symposium 27th, 28th, 29th. And this
Okay.
is in person. So we
Okay.
want to make sure that we're encouraging everybody. While we love the convenience of online, there's just something about
Of
that in
course.
connection.
Of course. Now you're talking about the neurosequential community. Is the symposium solely for people in the community? And when you say community, what do you mean by that for our listeners?
Yeah, so this is open to everybody, and I'm speaking to the symposium, or to the neurosequential community, because that's where we're connected, and that's the base of where these things are driving from. The presentations are selected because they are utilizing the neurosequential model as the framework, and so that's part of why that is there. But if you are somebody that's new to the neurosequential network and Dr. Perry's work, or you're somebody who's very seasoned in this symposium is going to have different presentations, different content that's going to equip, inspire, and encourage you. So it's open to everybody, but I have to warn you, you're going to get connected to an incredible community if you're not already part of the neurosequential community.
Emily, one of the things I know that Michael wanted to talk about was what this looks like in practice.
Yeah.
Talking about this lens. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, this is the beauty of the model. And before I get into practice, is it okay if I mention a couple other things, just in terms
Of course.
Okay, so when we are looking at the neurosequential model, there are so many different models of trauma-informed care. And with the neurosequential model, we believe that there are so many elements of being able to create a deeper dive. So in other words, oftentimes, if you are a child and youth care counselor, you can understand the brain from a certain level. If you are a neuroscientist, or if you are really well versed in neuroscience, and maybe not a neuroscientist, and you want to understand more about the core regulatory networks, serotonin, norepinephrine, and things like that, you can just go into a bit of a deeper dive. So it has so many levels of understanding in which we can do our work, in which we can think about ourselves as clinicians, neuroscientists, as researchers as well. We have a component of the symposium that is going to be focused on bringing researchers together to think about how they want to be looking at outcomes for kids, how they want to be understanding evidence-based treatments for children and families as well. The other piece that I think is really important when we think about the neurosequential model of therapy. When we think about the neurosequential model, there are so many different models within that. It started from the neurosequential model of therapeutics, which was all about maltreated children. But since then, it's really there is now the neurosequential model in education, the neurosequential model of therapeutics in early childhood, in reflective practice and supervision, in sport, in caregiving. So what that tells us is that we're no longer just looking at trauma, but we're also looking at how the brain develops just neurobiologically, right? So instead of saying that we're trauma informed, we're actually being neurobiologically informed, so that when we're an educator and we have a classroom full of students, how are we going to optimize their education? How are we going to optimize their development? And it's no longer about, okay, we're going to understand trauma and therefore that's going to happen, but we're basically saying, what does a teacher need in order to provide at best an opportunity for each child within the classroom? So of course the piece around that is, what does it look like organizationally? So even though this is a model speaking about each individual child, as you know, when we're trauma informed, we're often talking about, being developmentally appropriate for each child. But along with that, we also have to provide structure. We have to provide predictability. So what does the organization, or what does the classroom in that particular case look like? We're going to create as much predictability as possible so the brain has access to novel information. And so it's not just about the child, it's also about organizationally. It's also, so when we think about the neurosequential model in reflective supervision, we're thinking about, so how are these teachers doing, for instance? I'm using education as an example. How are these caregivers doing? If they are not doing well, there's no way they're going to be able to support children and families as well. So it really is, we start with the child in the middle, and then we say, but the whole system has to change in order for us to be able to do this well. And that's what the symposium is really bringing together, is that entire system of people that are working with these families, caregivers, professionals. How are we thinking about the child? How are we supporting the caregivers? How are we supporting the professionals in a way that is neurobiologically informed, so that they can do the best work that they can do in those places?
Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning that, because I think that speaks to the people listening from all who are coming at this from all different angles. Yeah, exciting. Michael, talk a little bit about Emily. You're dove in just a little bit, but how the symposium is structured. Who's going to be there? Maybe give us a little taste. What are some of the headings going to look like? What is it? Talk to us.
Yeah, and I'm going to invite Dr. Wang as well to share, because there's so many amazing people that I don't want to miss out on that. But we've got Dr. Bruce Perry, we've got Dr. Stuart Avalon with Think Kids, Dr. Mark Brackett, and then Miles, and I'm drawing up. Yes, so those are our keynote speakers. And then we have a whole list of highlighted speakers. And Dr. Wong, if you want to kind of mention.
Well, let me interrupt. Rather than speakers, just give us the headings of what they're going to be talking about, because I think that might be able to speak or get more people as attention.
Well, and so Dr. Wong was talking about how the neurosequential model has these different components of the neurosequential model of caregiving, of sport, of education, all of those things. And so the presenters are bringing those pieces together and saying this is what it looks like in education. And so for the Neurosequential Model of Education, for caregivers, so we've got the people who've helped kind of launch the Neurosequential Model of Education, that Katie and Haley will be there. They've worked with Dr. Berry and all that, and looking at what does it look like in the schools. We've got Dr. Christy Brandt with the Neurosequential Model of Early Childhood. That has been, looking at that 0 to 5 piece. You've got Michelle Mikeheader with the caregiving. She's going to be speaking on that and what does that look like. And I think the structure of this is we wanted to take a look at, no matter what population you're working with, that you can see how the neurosequential model can be carried out and put into practice. They're understanding the neurobiology of the population you serve with. And so it's broken down into those different, categories, if you will.
Because we all have brains.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are, we do have a component speaking about Indigenous practices and how they're tied into the neurosequential model. We have Elder Casey Eagle speaker. He's going to be talking. He's going to be doing some experiential. So that's another piece that's going to be really valuable here, is people are going to get to experience what it's like to be involved. What does the implementation look like? And I get to play a little bit when I'm, kind of thinking about what this is going to look like in my practice. So we've got occupational therapist who's going to be talking about some of the specific somatosensory activities that are happening. We have teachers who have activities that they provide that are from the, what we would call the bottom up in the neurosequential model, somatosensory activities. We've got a land-based Indigenous circle that Elder Casey Eagle speaker is going to be providing for us as well. And opportunities with the researchers to talk about what are some of the topics that are missing, what are some of the topics that we need to be really addressing so that we're ensuring that we're continuously improving the practice for children and families.
Emily, how did you get involved with the neurosequential model?
Yeah, so, well, we started in 2011, and at the not-for-profit agency that I was working for, the Hull Services, the people that are the organization that is putting on the symposium. So we got to know Dr. Perry in 2011. Actually, I had met him several years prior to that when I was working in Iowa. And then saw him again when he was speaking in Alberta, and we had a bit of a conversation. And I told him what we were doing, and he really invited us to start thinking about things from that neurosequential lens. It was a huge change for us in our agency. So, in an agency with, at the time, 28 programs that were all doing different evidence-based treatments in silos, we had a common language. We started to understand brain development. We started to understand and really be creative. Our frontline workers were amazingly creative, which you will see at the symposium, in thinking about what does this mean in practice. If this is how the brain develops, and if this is the sequence in which we need to practice, what can we provide for all of these kids? And, as a result of that, we have a huge skateboarding program now. We have a huge subnivium farm that started with, a few boxes of garden elements, and now has become a farm to table yearly event in the school. It's absolutely beautiful. In fact, Guy, you should come and visit sometime, because it's definitely worth
Maybe I will. You both are very amazing salespeople. I'm like ready to jump in here. Michael, how about you? You just glow when you talk about this, the experience in totality, but more specifically, the neurosequential model. How has it shifted what you do?
Yeah, so you know that I have always worked with horses. That is my thing. And, I had my master's in counseling, and I grew up showing and training horses. knew that there was something incredible about them. And then I came into, I, I went to a natural lifemanship training, which is based in Dr. Perry's work. And I remember it connected so many dots for me in understanding how my brain developed and the disorganizations and things that were going on for me, and kind of understanding a little bit of the why behind the behaviors, and how to better support the clients I was serving. But then it also took a look, and I was able to see the horse brain, and how the horse brain is similar to that of a human's. And so it just helped me really understand that what I experienced as a child and being around horses was, it finally gave me words and understanding. It gave me the science behind what I experienced. And that's the thing to me. It's like, I just want to make sure that people know about this, because it has been it's changed my relationships with myself, with other people. It's changed how I do clinical work. And there's something about it. And Dr. Wang was talking about the creative aspect of this, with the understanding that when we understand the sequential engagement and how those systems are at play and how the core regulatory networks work, we can allow this to, as a clinician, I can show up as myself and put Michael's touch on that. And I got to be myself as a clinician, and it gave me freedom to be me, and understand what was going on with me, but also what was going on with clients, what was going on with my horses. And it's just opened up a whole different world for me, personally and professionally, because it just connected so many dots. So I get excited about it. I'm passionate about it, and it makes a whole lot of sense. And I feel like it's given me a whole different bit of tools in my toolbox, as I navigate my life and my career.
Wow. Wow. Very exciting. All right. As we kind of wind down here.
Can I add one
Yes,
more
of course.
piece?
Jump in, please.
So the beauty of this too is the scalability, right? So in other words, Michael can talk about these horses that I will never own, but I can think about it from the perspective of what does this mean in other areas for me? What do I love that has some kind of regulatory capacity that I can share with somebody else that is then going to be able to support their regulation, support their health, support their brain development and their growth, right? So we have people that'll go and they'll say, I love drumming. Well, drumming is a big one, right? Or I love knitting, or I love this. And that becomes something that they relate well to the child with. It has that physiological component of somatosensory regulation. And then they can start building that optimal space of brain development so that these kids can learn some skills, right? So it doesn't have to be huge and big. And in our agency, Push to Heal and the Subnivian Farms tends to be the brightest, most talked about programs, but we have all these other people that are doing these daily things with kids that are making this huge difference. So
Just to elaborate on that, so for people listening who maybe haven't studied or aren't informed about the neurosequential model, they might be saying, "This sounds amazing. Another model I got to study." But what would you say to them? How might this help them, inform them, add to what they're doing?
to me, it's been a way of life. It's been a way of thinking. As a parent, I think about it. I thought about it when I was raising my children. It's really a lens in which you see the world. So, when my child wasn't going to bed at night, I would be frustrated at times, and then I would think, okay, he's not being oppositional. He just is afraid. And then if I could think of it from that perspective, it just had a different lens. So if understanding this would be one thing. I think the other component is around knowing that there is always something to offer, because everybody goes into the field because they want to be doing well by other people, right? I don't think there's a single person that goes into the field because well, definitely not for the money, right? Do you know what I mean? So it really is about making that difference. And anybody who wants to be in relationship is, you know, building on the strongest component that we understand about brain development, right?
Right, right. Awesome. All right, Michael, how do people learn more about this? Again, tell us when it is, and yeah.
Yeah, so it is. I'm going to start with the date. October 26th is the pre-conference, and it runs. Then the symposium is the 27th, 28th, 29th October of 2026. So
Okay.
we are, yeah, and then people can go to Whole Services, and that their website. Emily, if you want to give us that.
Healthservices.ca is our website for our organization. You'll be able to find it there, but I can actually give you more detailed information. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
Whole Services, how is that spelled?
HULLSERVICES dot
Okay,
ca.
okay. All right. And we'll have all that. Wholeservices.ca.
And
Uh,
and we are being creative about the way that we're planning this symposium. So we're not saying everybody's going to be there from 9 till 5. We're really trying to dose things in a way so that people will have an opportunity to be in the mountains during the day. Because as we know, in October in Canada, you know, the sun sets at about 5:30. Maybe earlier than that at that time of year. So we really want people to have an opportunity to be outside during the daytime hours. So we are trying to understand that dosing,
mm-hmm.
as Michael was mentioning earlier, thinking about it from the dosing perspective, giving people an opportunity to learn and then have some physical activity and then learn again.
Okay. And Michael, again, what's the name of the symposium?
The Pathways to Prevention Symposium, and
Okay.
hosted by Whole Services.
Okay. Okay. And we'll have all that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Michael, awesome having you back here. You're welcome anytime. And Dr. Wang, great to meet you. Love to have you back. I appreciate you both. And so, I mean, you're both so inspiring. I mean, this conference is going to be amazing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Take care.
Have a
Here.
good day.